Yo ho ho ho, cosplay vorhees, and a cracking Christmas to us all. Now, I know you're just summoning a costume and not really a hardened killer, but I think you could probably handle some hostile plastic, and that's why I'm recruiting you into my festive emergency cracking unboxing and review anti-plastic backup team, featuring Pudge, Jubilee, and now cosplay vorhees. Alright everybody, emergency positions. This isn't one of your church picnic unboxing and reviews, no sir. This is a cracking unboxing and review of a figure of Conan. Although, this isn't it, obviously. This is just a placeholder, because this time the box is so mighty, it doesn't fit in this frame. Ho ho! Tally-ho! Let's go! Yo-ho, my friends, and I'm glad to have you with me as we unbox this, my Christmas present, and it promises to be a good one. Well, it better be, anyway. Spent all my Christmas money on it. This is Conan, Rage of the Undying, from Sideshow Collectibles, who have a reputation for making very large and very impressive figures, or so I've heard. All I know for sure is that it has a very large and very impressive box. But what does that tell us? As you can see, it has very large and bold graphics on them, but close inspection reveals there's a lot of digital chicanery going on in these images, no doubt to make them stand up to the great magnification they're under. So, as a result, the only way to know for sure what lies within is with a proper unboxing and judicious application of the unboxing knife. And we don't actually need the knife for the first part. Alright, here we go. I hope this is as easy as it looks. Nothing that a Herculean application of strength can't handle. Come on. Got it! Hey, oh gee. Now there is work for the unboxing knife to do. Conan himself is rising up. Push harder, Conan. Push. Use all of your strength. Any second. Up. Oh my. Oh. There's something I can say immediately. It's huge. Ah yes, is that the glitter of gold I see within? No, it's silica gel. This is what we're confronted with on opening the case. Conan is in bits. Let's fix that right off. Oh dear. Whew. Here it is marked Conan, Rage of the Undying, number 145 of 750. And he didn't think it too many. Oh, wrong barbarian. Well, if that's the base, we're going to need more Imperial space. I don't know how fragile this is. It feels very solid. And I think this goes here. There. Freedom. So long an unremembered dream was his. Almost. So when I was 6 years old, my Uncle Peter came to visit, and he brought with him his Atari ST computer. And on that computer, he had a game called Barbarian. And I was absolutely enchanted by this game, mesmerized. And my mum and my uncle took me down to the video shop to rent the film Conan the Barbarian. And they didn't have it. But they did have Conan the Destroyer. And when you're a kid, Conan the Destroyer is a perfect introduction to the genre of sword and sorcery. So when I saw that, that was it. I've loved barbarian heroes ever since. My thesis was about barbarian heroes. As far as this statue goes, it's certainly very impressive and very heavy. Matter of fact, all the bits that stick on, his hands, his head, seem to be held there purely by force of their own weight. Well, you know, the question remains, does it hold up to close inspection and critique? Let's find out. Right-ho, here we go. Conan! Where do I start? Well, how about I start by telling you that Conan looks bloody great. He is the most important and significant of the barbarian heroes, the archetype that stands as the signature protagonist of the sword and sorcery genre. Now right away we can see that this is a very traditional image of the character, full of action, excitement, atmosphere, and of course, rippling musculature, but more on that in a moment. The statue is also very big, and while that's impressive, it wouldn't count for anything if it wasn't up to snuff. Now, I confess I had myself convinced that the statue would pale in comparison to the promotional images that I'd seen online. And while there are individual parts that don't fare so well, all of the most important aspects are top-notch. It's obvious that great priority was given to the most important and visually central elements of the statue. The scenic base is a great example. The detail here is really wonderful and works very well at this large scale, which I'm very happy to see. More than this, there is an excellent use of colour in these crumbly ruins and rattly bones that really adds to the atmos. There is a great sense of depth and age to it all, and I really love this green tint that pervades through. It sort of hovers between an ancient moss and an eerie, supernatural glow. Ooh. Now, as great as that is, for the best of this figure, we must look at the form of Conan himself, and rightfully so. Every effort seems to have been made to ensure that the physical portrayal of Conan looks like it belongs squarely in the great canon of post-Frazetta sword and sorcery art. The sculpt of his body is first class, giving great dimensions to his fantastic anatomy. What really brings it to life is the colour, though. Look at the depth and definition to Conan's body. Look at the muscularity. Conan's physique commands the eye, and it is the locus of all the figure's energy and all of the viewer's attention. The designers surely knew what was at stake. Cut corners here and the entire figure would be undermined. This is because the representation of the body is of paramount importance in visual art regarding barbarian heroes, especially since 1966, when the world first got a look at this image, painted by Frank Frazetta, the Rembrandt of barbarians, in 1965. Now, this single image epitomised both Conan and the barbarian hero in general virtually instantly. Cast out were squeaky clean, conservative haircut sword and sorcery heroes, and in were fusions of the outlandish and the savage with the uncanny and challenging physique of the bodybuilder. This image is still and will probably always be the touchstone for barbarian heroes, including the statue at hand. Look, I can bang on about this stuff all day. Suffice it to say that if the designers of this statue had failed to make Conan's remarkable physicality the centre of its universe, then I think it would have fallen quite flat. We would have missed out on the confirmation that it's Conan's body, his own self, that is the source of all of his heroic potency and agency. You see, he doesn't have to be armed or knighted to have the authority to affect the world around him. He himself is enough. But you know the crown jewel of this sculpt of Conan? I think it's his face. Look at the marvellous expressive sculpting here and the precise paintwork. It really captures the warrior in a moment lived on the edge of life and death, which is, after all, the true native terrain of the barbarian hero. Elsewhere, we discover that this is a kind of composite figure with features made from secondary materials. This belt is made from a fabric with a very believable leather texture to it, and Conan's loins are girt with a skirt of rigid material that, it turns out, doesn't look out of place or out of scale as I'd feared it would. In fact, it synergizes very well with his realistic flesh tone. It's a very stiff fabric and has bits of wire around its edges so that you can arrange it in various poses, and there is even a second layer underneath with additional leather features. Matter of fact, Conan has 3 layers of clothing if you count his mighty codpiece, and I certainly do. And best of all, no magnets. Incidentally, Conan did run afoul of a giant magnet in the story Man-Eaters of Zambulla. It's not all wine and roses, though. As I said before, priorities were clearly involved in the construction of this statue, and nowhere is that clearer than in the accessories. Now, Conan's skirt and greaves look amazing, especially for the scale, but elsewhere I find the quality starting to break down. When this happens, it's usually not a question of detail. Now, the detail is clearly there, as can be seen on this belt buckle, but it's the paintwork that is often left wanting, especially since it's usually right next to Conan's excellent flesh tone. Now, I've got to make a confession. I actually like the effect this has on some of the parts. For example, this skeleton warrior's crest looks a bit rough in this picture, but when viewed in concert with the rest of the model, it looks appropriately weathered and ancient. Likewise, Conan's mace. On my copy at least, it's clearly a bit bent and, well, misaligned, but I think that makes it look like a ceremonial piece that has been commandeered and beaten out of whack by Conan on his adventure. It's kind of a happy accident to me, but others out there might be a lot less forgiving of this sort of thing. I am much less enthused about the capeche. Now, the mould is fine, but the paint ruins it completely. This falls all the way down to unacceptable levels, and I am amazed that it looks this bad. It approaches Geralt against the Griffin levels of rushed blundering, and considering that that model was made on the cheap for inclusion in a collector's edition for a computer game, that is saying something. Now, this weapon is, however, not actually all that prominently visible on the model, thankfully, and it is the only part to really and truly disappoint. On a different figure, the state of some of the accessories would have been a much bigger problem. But here, most of the negativity that they generate is simply swallowed up by the statue's outstanding design. Conan is seen in the midst of action, thundering violently through an ancient and haunted ruin. This figure is fascinating to me because it makes a real effort to capture the imagination. This might represent the best union of figure and base that I have seen since Tiki, and it may in fact be better. Rage of the Undying here realises the great potential of the scenic base, overcoming the base's usual position as a practical afterthought, instead operating in partnership with the primary figure to give us a glimpse into a world of heroic adventure. There's a character in the figure, action around the character, a location around the action, and an adventure in the location. Oh aye, it's our old friend the implied narrative again. With Tiki, we had a narrative that was there if you wanted to get in and find it. In Rage of the Undying, featuring Conan, the larger story around the figure is all but presented to us directly. It is an open invitation for the imagination to enter this world. Look at the way almost every element seems in motion. The pillar is falling, the skulls are toppled, this warrior beyond death is flung backwards in Conan's wake, and even the flagstones are falling away beneath Conan in a moment of imminent peril. It is as though Conan's excess heroic energy is being grounded through Conan's boot, and it's more than the reality around him can take. The statue is blessedly without boundaries, which suits a boundless adventurer such as Conan. I love how the scenic base doesn't just end at any point. Instead, bits of it jut out into imaginary space, daring us to follow. You want to know my favourite detail? It's this ring. You generally only see it if you haunch down, but there it is, promising another chamber, perhaps a dungeon or secret tomb, right beneath where Conan is fighting. I also like this skull. All this chaos around him, but he maintains an air of business as usual. This is a top-notch statue of Conan, and despite some inconsistent quality amongst the accessories, I hold it to be a top-notch statue in general. This is a great maiden voyage for Sideshow Collectibles into Bardic Lands, and I am now no longer anxious about having committed to getting another of their statues around the same time next year. But that is another story. Well, it's happened. Conan has conquered Imperial space. He's crushed the women, seen Pudge driven before him, and heard the lamentations of Moff Tarkin. And this does leave me without my anti-plastic backup team, unfortunately, but I think I'll be okay, because it's not like the plastic has been particularly aggressive in recent...